I grew up with music. My parents were both music educators, so I do not have a memory as a kid of not having music around me. Going out and buying the soundtrack to Star Wars, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, those early John Williams things, playing them really loud on the turntable, that was rock and roll to me. I literally didn't know. I didn't hear a lot of songs with beats and stuff. It wasn't until I was probably 9 or 10 that finally at school I started to hear some pop music. And I remember the first two singles, yes, on vinyl, I went out and bought was Queen, Another One Bites the Dust, and Charlie Daniels' band, The Devil Went Down to Georgia. Friend of mine named Finn Bjornsson reached out to me to add some strings to things because I was starting to get a reputation as a string arranger and producer. So he brought me some early Cascade ideas, and I started putting strings to them. Cascade started to kind of become something, but it was still just a small, fun friend thing. We kept making music together for a long time, and just more and more, and Cascade's career started to take off. He got a record deal, and then they had the idea of maybe doing another project that was a little more mellow, a little more of the deep house stuff. Finn had worked with this singer on a different Cascade song named Becky Jean Williams, and he thought, let's make a different project called Late Night Alumni. We were never a local band playing small clubs. Thanks to the success of the records and Cascade, we were able to kind of step up to a mid-level tier on our first show ever. We went huge. We had an hour-long thing in 5.1 surround. We had a string quartet and a full band. It got more and more and more work to where after a while I was sleeping on a blow-up mattress in a studio in Santa Monica for weeks at a time, working on Cascade albums and loving all of that. And that same year that I was so busy with Ryan, I actually got into the Film Composers Lab, which was 2 weeks up at Sundance, and that was another pivotal move. The projects will just go from wacky late 80s, early 90s pop synthy sounding stuff like I did for a Netflix documentary series called Muscles Mayhem. That was such a blast. To kind of more pensive, thoughtful things. Another Netflix series I did was called Working, What We Do All Day. It was produced by Barack Obama. Recently, I scored an animated short called 95 Senses that was nominated for an Oscar. After all these years of making hundreds of library pieces of music, when this came along, SCOREMONGERS, and a chance to make something that fits emotionally, and I can just step back and let something breathe for a second. Go ahead and just let that note trail for 4 counts. It's not like, oh, we've lost attention. Let it pause. We actually put pauses in here so it's easy for editors to move things around. Things that I do in a real score. Rural noir, obviously there's something terrible has happened. It wasn't just like action, suspense, romance. It was like, let's literally think of something has happened. They found a body in a swamp. We wouldn't stick to that specifically because we wanted to make sure this would work with whatever an actual storyteller is going to use. As far as instrumentation, it's more acoustic kind of sounds, twangier sounds, manipulating and mangling them horribly. I will just grab a guitar and play it as best I can and just print it. Capturing a sound and then manipulating it after the fact is probably one of my main ways of working. Because if I can just catch a mood and then develop that quickly, that goes a lot farther than thinking how to stack 50 different instruments to get some sound. We wanted to get away from the twang and slide of the previous library. Still just in intrigue, not quite as heavy as some of the others, but just trying to find something conversational and something that someone could tell a story over because it's not quite as strong pulling you one direction or another emotionally. On Requiem, World Without End, we tried to literally do an end of the world kind of scenario. The thought was that the birds are acting strange, something's happening, and then at a certain point an event happens and it just builds and gets more intense, and then you've got survival aspects and people running for cover, people fighting each other, people coming to terms with it, and then some sad realizations of this is happening, we're not going to be able to stop this, and hug your loved ones, this is it, it's over, and then ending a culmination of almost a grand, beautiful ending, not a tragic ending, but the final symphony at the very end. That was a lot of fun to go through because there were no rules as far as instrumentation. I went from acoustic to the weirdest synths I could. I made tons of weird sounds with my mouth to get some of the sounds I couldn't find in a sampler or synthesizer. Long-term side effects was actually just an email that was sent to me by the team. So I started thinking of, okay, what could that mean? Obviously, we think of medical things like something has gone wrong with a medical experiment, or it can be long-term side effects of an emotional event that has happened. I started to bring in more vocals, and the more it went, we started realizing this could be part of a vocal series. And so I brought in some professional singers, and I also brought in my own daughter, because I did not want a super professional, polished voice. I wanted it to be very natural, like a little girl who was sick or something was going on. And come to find out, she actually had really good pitch and sang very well, but it still had that innocence and a rawness, and I was careful to keep it that way and just build harmonies. The nice thing with that one is you have the vocals, you can still peel those off, and there's a lot still going on underneath. It's mangled audio, a lot of that. And in fact, I would say that would describe most of what I've done electronically with these isn't a straight synthesizer. I have no interest in putting some straight analog pad in. I love those, but for this, it's almost always going to be an acoustic source. Black Mountain Mist was meant to be set in kind of the Appalachian Mountains, just kind of going for that kind of a simple prairie thing, fiddles. I'm not trying to be Western, it's definitely more Appalachian Eastern sounds. And again, that a conflict, resolution, story, playtime. There's some of the more traditional, happier stuff of these libraries I did are in Black Mountain Mist. This has been completely fun, fulfilling. It's very satisfying. I hope to do a ton more.